The men rode past her without a second glance, their rifles loaded and their minds already made up. By the time the sun touched the ridge, 3 of them would be dead, and the rest would owe their lives to the woman they refused to hear. She had warned them once. That would have to be enough. Subscribe for real Western stories. Comment where you're watching from. Her name was Ayanna, and she tracked better than any man in the settlement. She was 26 years old, Shoshone by birth, and had spent the last 4 years living between her people's winter camp and the edge of a Colorado frontier town called Ashford. Her father had been a respected scout before he died. Her mother still lived in the camp, weaving and teaching the younger girls. Ayanna moved between both worlds because she had no choice. The land was shrinking, the town was spreading. Someone had to watch the boundary. Every week, she brought venison and rabbit to the trading post. The owner, a man named Stokes, paid her half what he paid white hunters, but he paid in cash, and cash meant ammunition. She never argued. She simply remembered. The townspeople knew her face. They nodded when she passed. Some of the women bought her beadwork. But no one asked her opinion, no one included her in decisions. When the men gathered to talk about cattle routes or water rights or trouble brewing in the hills, Ayanna stood outside the circle. She listened, but they never turned to her. She had learned to read the ground the way others read newspapers. A bent stem told her how long ago someone passed. A shifted stone showed direction. Hoof depth revealed weight and speed. She could tell you if a rider was calm or anxious by the pattern of the tracks. She knew the difference between a horse running from something and a horse running toward it. But she was a woman. And she was Shoshone. So when she spoke, men smiled and looked past her. Ashford sat in a narrow valley between 2 ridges, with a single road running north to the railhead and south toward tribal land. The town had grown fast in the past 2 years, too fast. Miners came looking for silver. Ranchers came looking for grass. Merchants came looking for money. Everyone wanted a piece of ground that had belonged to someone else a generation ago. The Shoshone had signed a treaty that promised them the eastern hills. The government had promised to keep settlers off that land. But promises were just words, and words disappeared when no one enforced them. Ayanna's people had decided not to fight. Not yet. They watched. They waited. They moved their camps when they needed to. But the younger men were angry. Ayanna could see it in the way they rode, in the way they sharpened their blades at night, in the way they stopped talking when the elders walked by. The town didn't see it. The town saw quiet hills and empty trails and assumed everything was fine. Ayanna saw something else. For 3 days, she had found tracks along the ridge trail unshod ponies, moving in pairs, always stopping at the same overlook above Ashford. She recognized the hoof prints. They belonged to horses from her cousin's band, a group that had refused to move to the reservation. They were young, they were proud, and they were planning something. She brought the information to the town marshal, a man named Hendricks. He was 50 years old, gray-bearded, and had survived 2 range wars. He was not stupid, but he was tired. She told him what she had seen. She described the tracks, the timing, the overlook position. She explained that the riders were scouting the town, likely planning a raid on the supply wagons that came through twice a month. The next wagon was due tomorrow. Hendricks listened. He nodded, then he told her he would keep it in mind. He did not call a meeting. He did not post extra guards. He did nothing. Ayanna left his office and walked to the livery. She checked her saddle, cleaned her rifle, and filled her canteen. Then she rode out alone. The supply wagon left the railhead at dawn and rolled south toward Ashford with 4 guards and a driver. It carried flour, salt, ammunition, medicine, and 2 cases of whiskey. The town had paid for it in advance. If it didn't arrive, the winter would be harder than it needed to be. Ayanna reached the ridge trail 2 hours before the wagon was scheduled to pass. She tied her horse below the crest and climbed on foot. The tracks were fresh. She counted 6 riders, maybe 7. They had stopped at the overlook again, and this time they had built a small cairn of stones, a marker. That meant they were coordinating. That meant today. She moved along the ridge, staying low, reading the signs. The raiders had split into two groups. One group would block the road from the north. The other would hit the wagon from the side, driving it into the rocks where the guards couldn't maneuver. It was a good plan. It would work. She rode back down and positioned herself on a slope overlooking the ambush point. Then she waited. The wagon appeared an hour later, dust rising behind it, the driver whistling. The guards rode with rifles across their laps, bored and sunburned. They had no idea. Ayanna fired a single shot into the air. The driver pulled the horses to a stop. The guards turned, rifles raised, scanning the hills. One of them shouted. Another one spat and swore. They thought they were being attacked. Ayanna stepped into view, hands raised, rifle pointed at the ground. She called out that there were riders ahead, that the road was blocked, that they needed to turn back. The lead guard was a man named Farrell. He had a thick mustache and a thicker gut. He squinted at her, then lowered his rifle and laughed. He told the others it was just the Indian woman. The one who sold rabbits. He said she probably wanted money. He said she was wasting their time. Ayanna repeated the warning. She pointed to the rocks ahead. She told them the raiders were Shoshone, young and angry, and that if they continued, they would lose the wagon and probably their lives. Farrell shook his head. He said he had been running these roads for 10 years and never had trouble. He said she was scared of shadows. He said if she wanted to help, she should go back to her people and tell them to stay out of the way. The other guards agreed. One of them made a joke. Another one told her to move. Ayanna stepped aside. She did not argue. She had said what needed to be said. The wagon rolled forward. She mounted her horse and rode parallel to the road, staying high on the slope. She watched the wagon approach the narrow pass where the rocks pressed close on both sides. She saw the flash of movement on the ridge above 7 riders, not 6, spreading out into position. The attack came fast. The first group rode down from the north, blocking the road with a line of horses. The driver yanked the reins. The wagon skidded. The guards shouted and raised their rifles, but before they could fire, the second group hit from the side. Arrows came first, then rifle shots. One guard fell. Another dove behind the wagon. Farrell fired twice, missed, and took a bullet in the shoulder. The driver abandoned the seat and ran. 2 of the raiders chased him down and dragged him back. The remaining guards threw down their weapons. The wagon was surrounded. Ayanna did not move. She stayed on the slope, hidden behind a stand of juniper, and watched. The raiders were efficient. They cut the horses loose, smashed open the crates, and loaded the supplies onto their own mounts. They took the ammunition first, then the medicine, then the whiskey. They left the flour in the dirt. Farrell was bleeding. One of the raiders tied his hands. Another one kicked him onto his knees. The youngest raider, a boy no more than 17, raised his rifle and pressed the barrel against Farrell's head. Ayanna fired. The shot hit the ground 2 feet in front of the boy. He jumped back. The other raiders turned, searching the slope. Ayanna fired again, this time closer. Then she stood and stepped into view. She called out in Shoshone. She used her cousin's name. She told them she was kin. She told them the town would send a militia if they killed the guards. She told them they had made their point. She told them to take the supplies and leave the men alive. The raiders hesitated. The boy with the rifle argued. He said the guards had stolen Shoshone land. He said they deserved to die. Ayanna did not disagree. She simply told him that killing them would bring soldiers, and soldiers would burn the camps. She told him his mother would pay for his pride. The boy lowered the rifle. The raiders took the last of the supplies and rode north. They left the guards tied and bleeding, but alive. Ayanna rode down. She cut the ropes. She bandaged Farrell's shoulder with a strip from her own shirt. She helped the driver to his feet. None of them spoke. None of them looked at her. She mounted her horse and rode back toward Ashford. By the time the guards limped into town, the sun was halfway down the sky. Farrell went straight to the marshal's office. The whole town gathered. Farrell told the story, how they had been ambushed, how the raiders had taken everything, how they had nearly been killed. Hendricks asked how they escaped. Farrell paused. His face tightened. He said the Indian woman had been there. He said she had fired shots. He said she had spoken to the raiders in their language and convinced them to leave. Someone in the crowd asked why she had been there at all. Farrell did not answer. Hendricks turned to one of the other guards. The man confirmed the story. He said Ayanna had warned them before the ambush. He said they had ignored her. He said she had saved their lives. The crowd went quiet. Hendricks asked where she was now. No one knew. Ayanna was already gone. She had ridden to her cousin's camp and found the raiders unloading the stolen supplies. She sat with them by the fire. She did not lecture. She did not shame them. She simply told them the town would be watching now. She told them the next raid would end differently. She told them to take what they had won and move west, away from Ashford, away from the patrols. Her cousin asked if she was choosing the town over her people. She said she was choosing survival. She said pride was expensive. She said the young men could carry it if they wanted, but their families would pay the cost. The boy who had held the rifle looked at the ground. The others stayed silent. Ayanna left before dawn. When she returned to Ashford 3 days later, the town was different. Hendricks met her at the edge of the settlement. He did not apologize. He simply asked if she would be willing to scout for the town on a regular basis. He offered her twice what Stokes paid for game, plus a stipend for information. He said the council had approved it. Ayanna agreed. Over the following weeks, the men who had dismissed her began to include her, not in words, not with speeches. But when they planned patrols, they asked where she had seen tracks. When they chose routes, they followed her advice. When she spoke, they stopped talking. Farrell never thanked her. But he never interrupted her again, either. The town lasted through the winter. The Shoshone bands moved west and north, avoiding confrontation, preserving their people. Ayanna continued to move between both worlds, trusted by neither, essential to both. She had not asked for respect. She had simply proven that survival required listening, and that the cost of ignoring someone because of who they were could be measured in lives. By sundown, the men who dismissed her had learned what she already knew, that strength is not loud, and authority is not given, it is earned in the choices people make when no one is watching. The lesson is simple. Underestimating someone because of their gender or their background is not just wrong, it is dangerous. Quiet competence will always outlast loud pride. And the people who survive are the ones who learn to listen before the cost becomes too high. If this story meant something to you, leave a comment. If you want more like it, subscribe. Thanks for watching.